Hey there. Welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
I'm Mike.
I'm Doug.
On this week's episode, we're going to cover the massive Tesla price cuts. We also have an update from Elon about FSD Beta 11, and we're going to cover some Electrify America charger reliability concerns. That and more this week on episode number 32, which starts now. Alrighty, let's jump in. How are you gentlemen doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, all right. Doing all right.
Exciting week as always.
It has been an exciting week in the world of Tesla. So I'm glad that you're doing well. Not everyone's doing well. So let's jump into this topic. Tesla announced some pretty big price changes.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
Something between 6 and 20%, depending on the model.
6 and 20%. That's kind of crazy. Not counting the $7,500 from the U.S. government on the cars at the rebate. So there's quite a big quite a big reduction. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the Model Y got the biggest hit, but I mean, at least all my friends are looking at the 3. So there's a huge interest in the 3s right now.
Yeah, we've got a thread on TMC's forums that's pretty hot with a lot of comments going on. Some folks happy about the news, a lot of folks not so happy about the news.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because from several angles, because you sort of have to wonder what's the real goal, what's the real reasoning. And you can come up with plenty of theses and arguments about why it is what it is. But certainly people that just bought feel kind of burned. And people that are interested are ready to buy. And we already saw what happened in China, with the price cuts there. And you saw these, video of huge crowds there. And it's hard to distinguish between, which are the people that are protesting and upset that they feel like they overpaid, and which are the people like, I want a good deal and I'm ready to buy another car, right?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think it's fair to say if you were on the fence or interested in getting a Tesla, now's a pretty good time to buy. Because they've added a bunch of, the cars, they're always improving. There's always new things coming in the cars. They're always making them better in some way. Between software and hardware adjustments. And then on top of that, they now have a pretty significant, price savings, which also enables several of the models to now get you the $7,500 tax credit, which you couldn't get before. So I feel like it's a good time to buy if you're interested.
There's another twist to that. And here's another twist, and this is one I'm personally interested in, is we're shopping for a used 3. And right now, the prices of the used Teslas overall are just imploding. I mean, they are just all over the map right now while all the dust settles. And so I'm kind of sitting back and watching. But for the first time, I saw a Model 3 with relatively low miles going for $26K. I could expect to see a higher mileage, maybe 80, 90,000 miles on a Model 3 going mid-20s in the next month or two. That puts it well within the reach of a lot of folks that would like an EV, especially a Tesla, but couldn't afford the new one. So this opens up the door. Not to mention the used Model 3s are you can get the California rebate on them. So there's actually a few bucks available when you buy it. So that might be the stealth deal, is picking up a used Tesla versus the new one.
And there is an incentive in California for used?
California does have an incentive for the used Teslas, and I'm not sure if the new federal incentive applies to the used. I've been told it has. So that's like a $2,000 incentive from the feds versus the $7,500 for a new one. But again, I would expect in the next month, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, for the pricing to really kind of settle out a little bit. You're going to see a lot around here. We're seeing a lot of dealers starting to dump Teslas. They bought high with the expect to flip it. Now they can't flip it. Now they just need to get the hell out of it.
Yeah, the funny thing about it feels like trying to time the market the way Tesla seems so unpredictable about what they're going to do with the pricing. My car just went over the 4-year mark. I got it in December of 2018. And so, my warranty isn't there anymore. And there are some things that I would like, just minor things, but like, the newer cameras, I'd like, probably the newer, entertainment computer. And so there are reasons to have a newer one. Also, I got the unicorn mid-range car, which was
Yeah, it's almost a long range. Yeah.
it's in the middle there, and it was just to incentivize. It was a step on the ladder, basically. The people that wanted the standard range, but or were fine with standard range, but still wanted to get the tax rebate, since the tax rebate was running out of that year, with Q4, I think, of that year, and the next quarter is going to be halved. So people just trying to get under the line with that, and so they introduced this mid range. It was just kind of like that.
Well, the funny thing about that mid range is in the used car market, nobody knows what the hell it is. They lump it together as a standard range or standard range plus.
Yeah. I mean, and the car has the nice sound system and everything. I mean, I would be hesitant to sell it because it has a nice wrap, a nice 3M wrap, and that I'll talk about at some point in the future. So it's kind of unique in that way. But with the warranty running out, I'd really consider it. And I read of people that sold their Model 3s sometime last year and managed to recoup 95% of what they paid for it,
Right.
And that would be a great incentive. Oh, I could sell that and then now buy new at a relatively low price. Then again, you have to say, like, okay, well, the prices are lower, but they were maybe this low a couple of years ago, right? So it's really like
Right.
trying to time the market. I thought the way they raised prices, whatever, a year and a half ago, whenever that was rather dramatic.
Sure.
And you heard the stock people saying, "Oh, this is great because we get more margin and that sort of thing."
Yep.
And I think price should match, where supply and demand meets. So, but it just seems so. It feels haphazard. It feels too extreme and too fast. It's like instead of feathering the throttle, it's like
binary
stop lift. Yeah. And that can upset people. So yeah, that's rough. We had a user, I'm sorry, a commenter, Josh M. He said he's disappointed in how Tesla handled this whole ordeal, and specifically he says, telling owners who just invested into your business for the first time ever to pound sand after they tanked all our values and leaving us underwater in loans isn't great.
Need to get gap insurance.
Yeah. Okay, so he's coming from the stockholder perspective.
I mean, I have to say, so as someone who mostly has purchased new cars throughout my life of purchasing cars, I've always had to get gap insurance, right? Like, unless you're putting a substantial amount down, when you drive that car off the lot, the value drops a crap load.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's pretty common. I think most people that buy new cars expect to get gap insurance unless you're putting a significant amount of money out. For me,
or you plan to hang on to the car for an extended period of time.
Sure. But getting gap insurance is, it's a risk assessment thing. But I mean, as far as there's winners and losers from both sides, right? So like, who's going to be really happy about this news? Someone who hasn't bought that Tesla yet. That was thinking about it. They were going to get it, but they didn't. Who's going to be upset? Someone that recently bought a Tesla because now their value went down a little bit more. But I mean, unless you're trying to flip your car, which I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of Tesla folks out there that love flipping cars. That is not a normal practice for most people. Most people don't buy cars to flip them at a profit or to try, and keep turning them in every year or two. If you want to do that, that's what leases are generally for. So So I don't know. I feel like Tesla's goal, like a lot of people talk about, they think Tesla's a great company for trying to revolutionize the world and spread EVs out there. The goal of getting more people in the cars means the prices have to go down. They're going to have to do that. And yeah, there'll be models that are more expensive and models that are cheaper, but it's going to have to happen. I don't think this will be the last price drop we ever see.
This is kind of like how Tesla will release a new feature, and people that just bought feel burned because they didn't get this new feature, and that's like a price drop, right? You get a new feature, and like suddenly your car isn't worth as much. I mean, the most dramatic one was back when the Model S D came out, the dual motor one, because at the same time as the dual motor came the Autopilot cameras with the Mobileye, and what was said at that point was, okay, this car is going to be able to drive itself, right? And so I think the previous like top of the line car was the I forgot. I think P100 Plus or something like that. I've forgotten now. But then when the D came out, okay, that's the new top of the line car, and whoever had that top of the line car, like in a day, their car dropped 20K in value, right? Well, that was the top of the line car, and okay, it effectively got replaced.
Right. So, but I mean, that's been the case with new cars for years, though, not just EVs.
Sure.
The rule of thumb is you buy a new car, drove it off the lot, and it dropped 10K as soon as you got off the lot.
Yeah. Okay. It's a little more dramatic with Tesla somehow, though.
It is. I mean, especially when they're also changing and improving the cars, right? So, like, for example, just throwing out there for those that hadn't heard, the Tesla Model S Plaids now, supposedly they're advertising that they have, better calipers on them for the brakes, right? Brakes have been a big complaint. So now they literally just dropped the price by like $15,000 or something like that. And they also are improving the caliper. Sorry, I take it back. They technically dropped it by $21,000 as the Model S Plaid. Between like a week ago and now, it is $21,000 cheaper. And it also looks like it's going to have better caliper brakes. So, like as somebody that doesn't have that and I paid more for the car, like, yeah, that kind of stings.
And you can get a round wheel.
You know what I mean? But it's a thing, right? Like, I don't know. It's a car. Cars over time lose value. That's just a known thing, unless it's a classic antique, type thing, which is, not normal people cars. So if you're planning on keeping the car, if you're not selling the car, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really affect you in the grand scheme of things. Try not to be too upset by it. But I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, yeah, we all get burned sometimes. I think there's a lot of happy people that are going to be able to buy Teslas. And now, as far as the stock price goes, that's who knows how this is going to impact that. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about demand. Like I said, there are a couple theses here. Like, okay, this is a great offensive move to dominate the market, or this is a reactive defensive move because demand has been suppressed because
demand's flat or falling. Yeah.
Either because people that are going to get the cars have them, or people don't like Tesla anymore because of Elon's antics on Twitter, or which is it really? That's a good question. I've definitely seen people that are like, I don't like this car anymore because I believed in the vision of the company, and the guy who represents the company I don't like anymore.
Sure.
That's what they say. I've never really been that sort of person. I'm like, okay, I believe in the mission of the company, and I think the technology is probably the best in the industry. And Elon has always been kind of a wild card to me, and I've always mostly ignored him in terms of how I view the company. But a lot of people don't, and a lot of people, the company doesn't advertise, for example, right? Like normal companies would. And you could argue that instead of dropping the price, they could, the money that they lose on margins there, they could have just spent on advertising, and advertising works.
Well, so let me throw something out there. How much of this do you think is a reaction to market forces such as the Mach-E and the Lyric and the Kia and some of the other cars showing up on the market and taking a good chunk of the market? You know, I kind of wonder if Tesla's feeling the heat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are reasonable alternatives, and especially if you want an EV and you're not happy with the company for XYZ reasons, the fact that people can go do something else, you know, that
Well, he
that
just
could
made
be
that
an
a lot
issue.
more challenging. You know, if you're looking at a $20,000 Delta, and in particular, take the Lyric, for example, it's $64K and does not qualify for the tax rebate. They're fighting it, but as of today, it doesn't qualify. So if you're on the fence, you know, and you're looking at Tesla versus Cadillac, that's a lot of money to consider.
Mhm. And I
Whereas
haven't
a week ago, that was different.
been in the market, so I haven't looked at it that much. But the tax rebate, at least before this price drop, looked really complicated and didn't seem to make sense in terms of which Tesla vehicles got the rebate and which didn't. Particularly like certain trim levels of Model Y didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. Now it becomes really simple, right? now it's much more simple. And also,
Yeah.
I've read that the additional cost, if you pay up front for FSD capability or whatever, doesn't get factored into the price limits on when you get whether or not you get the rebate. So yeah, it becomes a lot more simple. And if you wanted to buy, I mean, now is probably a good time to go ahead and buy.
There's still the income that you have to pay attention to with the rebate. You know, if you're married, for example, it's a $300,000 limit, and in the pre-show it was what, 150,000 if you were single. Is that what we figured out?
Yep.
Yeah. So you definitely have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, the other factor too, right? Like if you look at the price differences, also if you're borrowing money, interest rates have changed a lot too. Right? Interest rates have gone up. So when people are buying a car now and they're borrowing a bunch of money, they're paying more for that money than they did a year ago.
Yeah.
So there is some other aspect to look, they're trying, there's market forces, there's supply, there's demand, there's, they have to figure out how much can people afford. I think the federal rebate was a big factor, right? Like there was a lot of people upset about the Y not qualifying because it didn't count as an SUV or whatever unless it had a 7-seater. So they had to move some of those cars to try to get that incentive for the rebates. But they moved the whole market. Like, it's surprising how much they adjusted all the way up to the high end. Even their most expensive cars got a big price cut. And part of that, I think, had to do with loans and interest rates and things like that, right? Like it's not an apples to apples comparison when you just look at the price. There are other factors to think about.
And one of our viewers pointed out that there's a note on the site about March, and he says this is I'm not even going to try to say Mike's last name. What is that? Well, sorry, Mike. I'm just going to call you Mike.
I can't help you either. I can't help you.
What's with the March 2023 note on their website? That note is in reference to the fact the feds gave an exemption until March while they try to sort out the mess. That's the rebate. And they basically said, all right, EV, you qualify. But there's supposed to be a whole lot of other things that go into it. Where's the battery pack made? Where's the car made? The cost of the car. There's all these other little caveats that are supposed to come into play, whether you get the rebate or whether you get a prorated rebate. Until March, it's just flat, $7,500, boom, done.
And so those extra details had to do with making sure that it benefited
American business, American factories, American jobs,
American employees, American jobs, right?
And we have to admit, Tesla's one of the most American car companies there is, right?
Like, except the batteries aren't made here. I mean,
well,
and that was the deal with Tesla. The batteries are made,
right?
They're working on that, though, right? They are actively trying to build the batteries here.
I mean, they already have been making cells in Fremont, right? With Panasonic's help.
Just for which model? They just released a model with it. Was it one of the Ys that have those new cells?
Yeah, there are Texas-made Ys that have the 4680, I believe is the.
I thought I read something about that. Just briefly.
Yeah, but before that, the I can't. I've 20. I forget what it is. I forgot already. The cells that they're making in Fremont, they're those were going in S's and threes,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like my Tesla is my most American-made car probably I've ever owned. My wife has a Jeep. It was built in Italy, right?
Yeah.
Like you think
Yeah.
Jeep's American? No, it's built in Italy, right? It wasn't
Yeah,
built here.
my Ranger, when I had a Ranger, was
Yeah.
the same thing. It was
But-
mostly built in Mexico, and the transmission came out of Europe. And
Yeah, a lot of Fords.
I
got
think it
made
was
in
assembled
Mexico.
here in the States, but it wasn't made
Yeah.
here.
But my Tesla was made in Fremont, right? They're mostly made here.
And
So
then
anyway,
again,
so
your Nissan Leaf might have been made in Tennessee. So
That's true.
that's true. That's true. So yeah. So anyway, so price cuts. Pros, cons. What are you guys thinking? Are you overall happy about the news? You think it's a good thing, bad thing? What do you think Tesla could have done this better? Like, do you feel like they kind of?
I think they could have done it better. I think they could have done a lot better.
Okay.
From the
how would you
PR
want them?
optics. From the PR optics.
Okay.
They had this huge push. Please buy our car by December 31st. We'll give you this rebate.
Mhm.
Now, I'm willing to bet they already had in the back of their heads they were going to do this price cut. That's not
For
something
sure.
you just kind of pull out of the air a day before it's executed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm thinking they had that already in the works. And in a way, I kind of feel like people in December were sandbagged. Because they had all the inventory they were trying to clear out.
Sure.
well, and I mean, what was the real reason? It's again, it comes down to
Stock price.
goofy stuff like stock price, right? They had certain goals for the year, right?
Yep.
So they wanted to incentivize people to buy those cars before the end of the year, and so that they could deliver those cars by the end of the year. And they still fell short, even though they
Not by much.
not by much, and they moved an amazing number of cars.
They absolutely did.
But I'm sure missing that mark negatively affected the stock price, because that's what it tends to be. It's reactions to the the expectation, and then all the Twitter stuff didn't help either, and the overall economy.
I mean, they could go back to the people that bought their cars, let's say the last 2 weeks of December or 3 weeks, whatever the big push was, and say, yeah, we apologize, we handled it badly. Here's a year's subscription to FSD.
Yeah, I was going to say have
Throw 'em a
FSD
bone.
for free.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
it
mean,
won't cost them nothing either, right?
That literally doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Throw them a bone.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
I mean, tied into all this is customer satisfaction, right? And that for a while, I feel Tesla's taken that for granted. I mean, a lot of us have been happy with our cars, and generally we are, but service hasn't been great, probably because it hasn't scaled properly. These little things like that, just an attempt, little thing like that goes a long way to the customer feeling like they're respected. They could have done something like that. I think that would have been a good idea. And you have to wonder, how long will they become supply constrained again? With this level of pricing, like how soon are they? They're still trying to get Germany up to where they wanted, and there are slowdowns in Shanghai because of COVID.
Right.
So how long are they going to have excess of supply?
Right. Well, back to your question, Lewis. I am happy they did this, because it drives down the price of the used Teslas, of which I have.
And you're looking to buy. Yeah.
I have a very vested interest in this. I'll be clear about it.
Sure.
Right. And overall, I think you want the price to come down. And I don't care that much about the stock price. I want the price to come down. I wouldn't mind them if they continue to dominate the market, because I think they move the technology more than any other company.
Right.
But they still need, like, all those sort of customer satisfaction things, particularly service. Service needs to scale. It looks like they've been trying.
Serious help.
It looks like they've been trying recently. Even like in Maryland, I've noticed a few new service centers opening up, and so maybe it's on their radar. But if they have a ton of new users and then they have little issues and they can't get this stuff resolved, then you sour a new user. for a new owner pretty quickly.
Here's another side to all of this, and I'm going to throw it out there. That is, you got all these new Teslas that show up in December and January, and you still have a finite number of chargers. And Tesla has promised to open the chargers up to CCS at the same time. This ought to be real interesting in the next couple of months, I think.
All right, so I'm going to take that ball and we're going to run with it, and we're going to move right on to Electrify America charger reliability topic.
I knew you were a bright boy.
So we're going to spill the beans, Mike. You know, spread the word. What's the news here?
All right. So on the news front of Electrify America, of which I am a user, I do use their chargers. I have a subscription with them. I'll say it up front. They did not do well in the snow and freezing weather that was hitting the U.S. in the last 3 weeks or so. In particular, their very newest 350 kilowatt chargers just failed miserably. From Colorado all the way to the East Coast. If it got below zero, they died. End of story. And it just, and this is the charging network that a lot of OEMs have partnered with for their free charging. So you got like Mercedes, and you've got Volkswagen, and some of the other folks who have said, yeah, you buy our EV, we'll give you free charging. Well, that's great, except the chargers don't work. And they already have a reliability issue. I mean, I live here in sunny Southern California. We have a lot of wetness right now, but generally it's sunny. And I've got 6 stations within 5 miles of my house. And out of those 6 stations, every single one has got at least one dead charger, sometimes 3 or 4 dead chargers, almost any day of the week. It's just crazy. And, they've got some issues they got to work through. I mean, they were leaving people stranded back east. People are showing up to the chargers with hardly any range because it's cold. So they've lost range that they weren't really ready for. They're not used to driving in this kind of weather with an EV. And they show up to a brand new charger that on the app says it's good and available. And they get there and it's offline. Or what was worse is they would plug in and then it would fail. It couldn't make the final connection to the car. And so then they're kind of stuck.
Does not sound like a fun experience. So is mostly been an Electrify America issue? Have we seen this from Tesla at all? Or
Tesla actually did really, really well from all things I've read in the snow. I mean, generally speaking, they had onesies and twosies off, but generally speaking, the Tesla chargers just went. They just worked, kind of like an Apple product. They plugged it in and it went.
I've found them to be very reliable. I see some failure with destination chargers, like when you go to a hotel and they'll have a level 2 Tesla charger, and half the time I've done that, it's been broken, or like the connector is busted. And so you have to think about,
but that's on the site owner.
Exactly, right? So you're like, well, why is that? Well, the hotel, it's up to them, right, to fix it, or it got ran over. And so I think Tesla has done an excellent job of not just building new superchargers, but maintaining them and keeping them working.
Well, and it gets a little more complicated. So you've got your supercharger set up, and you've got a grid supplying power to it. And the supercharger is expecting a certain amount of power to be available from the grid at any moment in time. Okay, that's great. But in a really high load situation, we both know that grid can dip. So the superchargers tend to have batteries in the system to kind of, backfill what happens. EA doesn't seem to be doing that, or they don't do it as well, because they've had a lot of voltage issues. Either the regulation's off. I've read of a couple Rivians being bricked because of dirty power. Oh yeah. And others where the charger throws an error message about the voltage is wrong. It can't handle the input voltage. So there's a quality issue there that's not being addressed. Or not
the battery was part of the original promise of the supercharger. When there was the first unveiling, they showed this weird kind of phallic tower thing, and they hinted that this big tower is going to be holding batteries, and then that there would be like a solar canopy or something.
Yeah.
And that didn't quite happen. But the batteries made a lot of sense also in terms of lowering the cost of the charger installation, because you can shave the peak load by having
Absolutely.
a battery there, and that's part of a commercial
Yeah.
installation cost. So
Right.
again, we said it before, Tesla did an excellent job with this out of the gate. It was very well planned. I don't understand how these other companies are coming later, right? They have an excellent example, and
Right.
they can't
And they won't
can't
follow
just copy it, right? It's
Yeah.
like what is the issue here? And part of it is like, well, who's really responsible, right? Electrify America, that kind of feels like this thing was just thrown together to, use that VW money from their Dieselgate. And okay, so, but yeah, when it's not working
But that was years ago. I mean, by now you'd think Volkswagen would have gotten the message that they
well,
need
I
to
don't think
step up their
Volkswagen's
game.
responsible. They just paid money, right? So some organizations, took the money.
As far as I
and-
know, EA is still owned by Volkswagen.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
And they haven't gotten the message, even
get-
though they
get
sell
it
an
done
EV.
right.
Maybe they don't sell enough EVs yet to really care. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just looked. It is technically still owned by Volkswagen Group of America.
Yeah, I don't remember a shadow company or a shell company in the way. I think it's still Volkswagen.
I mean, but think about how many of the EVs that use that service are actually Volkswagens. I probably not that many, right?
So, and let me throw one more thing out. As I was in the rain yesterday charging my car, and I'm gonna hit Tesla on this too. Although I've seen signs of Tesla doing a better job of it, like Baker, for example, on the way to Vegas has got big canopies over the chargers, which most don't have. I don't know if any EVgo or any EA chargers have any kind of canopy. So I'm literally in the pouring rain with a high voltage connector trying to plug my car in.
Yeah, you're safe. I wouldn't worry
fine.
about that.
I know I'm safe. I know I'm safe. But if this was a gas station, every gas station I know has got a canopy and lights.
I mean, I get it. It's just that where they're able to put their installation, it's an existing parking lot at a a convenience store or Sheets or whatever, and they just put it there, and it would be nice to have a solar canopy like originally promised.
That would be nice.
My main complaint about the design of the Tesla superchargers is the way you hang up the
it falls
plug
off all the time.
It's
Mickey Mouse.
I'd rather it either the connector hang down so that the lower energy is it in a neutral position, or they had something that clicked in a little bit better, because it's not great. And I've had it. I put it back, and whatever tensions are loaded into the cord,
flicks it off,
just falls over, and hits my car. and I've seen pictures of people whose cars have been damaged, because the thing fell off and it cracked their tail light or whatever. And I've had it, I've gotten away with it mostly, but I'm starting to think, how can I like park a little further, or you don't want to just set it down, because that's the code for this one's out. This one doesn't work. So you don't want to just set it down. You want to put it in there, but it's
what the flip side of that is the cords for the superchargers are actually bendable. You can move it around and bends for it. You get some of this EA, like the 350 kilowatt EA charger with a liquid filled cable. Oh man, you're not bending that thing at all. That's under tension, and you're trying to put it into the CAS adapter. It's not
the best.
It's not pretty.
Some of the EVgo CCS connectors I've used back when I had an i3.
They work well.
I liked them too. Part of the design was they had a cable, like a retractable cord, holding on to the electrical cord, and it's sort of counterbalancing the weight a little bit, and it's holding the cord out of the way and off the ground. I'm like, yeah, okay, great. That's a good design.
Good idea. Although they've gotten away from that on their newer chargers, believe it or not.
Probably money savings.
Yeah.
Or
it is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that cost savings is such a big factor. Like even when it comes to Tesla superchargers, because I agree. Like looking at them, it's like, why don't you have them covered? Why, like you said, every gas station's covered. Why don't we? Even
Everyone.
Tesla doesn't do it for superchargers, and it's, or at least not the ones that I've been at. Not that I've
Well,
used them, but I have been at a
yeah.
few. Like,
Well, the only reason I
and
think Baker has it is it's 130 in the sun in the summertime.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think that's the only reason those chargers are
Yeah,
covered, because
if you
every
think
other
about
charger I've
that,
been to is wide open.
you could just sort of add up the electricity cost of the savings of all those cars AC while they're charging. That would probably pay for itself pretty quickly.
right.
But I think about the places, if I'm going up and down the East Coast, they're kind of smaller places. You need some kind of permits to even put up whatever kind of canopy, and it might get blown away or something. So yeah, I can see that as being a cost that they're not ready to do. It's just our parking lot, and we're not going to do anything more complicated for parking. But it should be, that gas is covered when you're getting your gas, and and that's for like whatever, a few minutes. This is longer. It'd be nice if it were covered. I agree.
Yeah, we have 2 superchargers nearby I've used that they're in parking lots, but they're in like a lower level of a parking lot structure.
Mm-hmm.
And
So it's
people
covered.
complain bitterly about being in the parking lot. It's dark and they smell. But you know what? You're inside. You're out of the weather. They're covered. Yeah, everything's a trade-off. And one is down here in the lowlands, which isn't bad, but one is up in Lake Arrowhead at 6,000 feet. So not having to slush around in snow and the sleet and the rain when you're trying to charge, that's a plus.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another consideration then. If you have an overhang structure, there's the support for that structure, and then you have a harder time plowing that parking lot.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
But anyways, that's the whole story about EA and their the final point that was made about EA. People were complaining to EA about this issue, and nobody was answering. It's like the whole place went on vacation between Christmas and January. So,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
So much for
I mean,
support.
It's another reason, another feather in Tesla's cap, or another incentive to buy a Tesla, right? Like, there's a lot of people that buy Teslas specifically because of the charging network.
There's an existing
why am I looking at a Model 3 used? I have an i3 used, and my daughter hates it because it's such a pain in the ass to charge. And she's getting ready to go to college, and she's going to be going cross country. The Tesla charging system is a no-brainer as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, and I get the sense, given the networking and the communication, the way the Tesla charging works, if a charger is out, Tesla knows very quickly, and the whole network knows, right? Like me and my car know that, this particular one is not working. With EA, who knows what's going on? I saw pictures of one charger, and like the screen is on like a Windows
activation
screen. Like, what the heck? So if that's not working, you have to assume that, okay, whatever networking is there.
I haven't seen that one. I have seen the Linux boot screens on the older EA chargers.
So they moved from Linux to Windows. We've already
seen
a
did.
problem.
Apparently
here.
they did.
We're already seeing a problem. already a mistake. All right.
Anyways.
Oh man. All right. Well, thanks for that, Mike. It's real interesting. Glad I have a Tesla and do not need to use EA chargers. So I guess this is a quick topic, but very exciting news for me. I was really happy to see Elon tweeted out an update. Somebody asked him some specifics, because for those that remember, in last podcast we spoke about V11.3 going wide. We're gonna have that soon, hopefully. So someone asked Elon, like, hey, what are you most excited about? What's the thing for version 11 that is really like, we should all be excited for? And he basically said it was a lot of small things. There's a tweet. He said, many small things. We started to make use of neural nets for vehicle navigation and control, not just vision. And that for me is huge. That's like, as a tech geek, as a FSD geek and machine learning nerd, like that's awesome. So for most people that don't realize, like FSD, how it generally drives now, right? It's mostly just driving where it's using neural nets to interpret what it's seeing, but it's not using that to actually make decisions on how it drives or how it interacts with the environment. And apparently, with version 11, that's changing. They're actually going to be using the neural nets to as part of the control and vehicle navigation portions of the car.
So I'm a little surprised by that. The navigation part doesn't surprise me because I'm sure it's something. I think Tesla's doing their own navigation, but it's something like Google, right? Google Maps, okay, you have some directions. But it surprised me that the control is not already neural net in terms of like deciding what to do.
So it's possible that again, we don't know the specifics. This is just what Elon said, and as smart as Elon is, he's also not one of the engineers on his team. So it's possible they were maybe doing some degree of this before. But the fact that Elon's aware of it or is even mentioning it now means that it's probably going to be more taking a larger part of the work here. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see. It's also possible that it's just the highway portion that he's really referring to. Maybe the city driving was already doing it. I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, it's a small update, but I think an exciting one about FSD Beta 11. That we're going to see more of that, more of the neural nets controlling the car, which hopefully will allow it to drive better in the future.
It allows the car to drive better.
Allow the car to drive better. Right.
Well, speaking about how we drive and not driving well.
Here it comes.
Well, people might already know there, and obviously they do already know because it's been in the news. There was a vehicle that came to a stop on a highway in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it was just, I guess the driver was just driving along, and it seems like Autopilot decided that he wasn't interacting enough and just sort of came to a stop. Let's see if we can show the video here. Oh, let's see. Wrong one. Wrong one. All right, give me a minute then. The wonders. Let's see. How about this one? Here we go. This is it.
Yep, that's
this
it.
article by The Intercept that shows the video, and here we go here. So for those in audio, it's just a car is going in an underpass, maybe like a tunnel, and it decides to signal left, and it gets in the far left lane and just slows down. And then
it looks like it's like pulling over, like it's almost like, hey, I'm pulling over to stop, possibly because the driver isn't interacting with the car,
right? And
alerting.
I believe that's what the behavior is supposed to be. If the driver is passed out or is incapacitated, the car is trying to, at least what's been advertised, I've never let it do it, but it's supposedly it would pull over and slow down. But it doesn't seem particularly aware of like what's behind it. Here's another view.
But the highway patrol are going to say to everybody that was behind it, you should have been allowing enough room and you should have been paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so there was a pileup that happened. And again, this was back Thanksgiving last year, but the video of what actually happened came out about last week or so.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a bit of a debate in terms of who's really at fault here. Obviously the driver is at fault. And I would say that this particular behavior is, I think it's reasonable for the car if the guy hasn't interacted, but it's hard to know what happened. Like, did he fall asleep? Because if you watch the video, you can see the guy get out and look around or something.
So what
perhaps perhaps he fell asleep and perhaps he woke up, or perhaps he just didn't really understand what was going on. I've read that this guy is an older gentleman, and maybe he wasn't completely aware about how the software is supposed to work. And it's actually it's kind of easy to miss the alerts. The beep maybe less so, but the flashing on the screen, if you're not staring at the screen and you're actually looking at the road, you kind of miss it. Particularly with now this is a Model S, I believe, so they should have had something directly in front of them. So, but
yeah,
who knows? But But anyway, some people are using this to, blame Autopilot or FSD, and this definitely, in my opinion, is completely on the driver. But you could think, okay, you got a lot of new Tesla owners coming out, and if they're not completely aware about how these features work and what their fail-safes are.
Well, but that's not a Tesla issue. That's a lot of new cars with sophisticated interfaces. The drivers don't read the manual. The salespeople don't know what the hell they're selling, and they just get in and go.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, if some years ago, I suppose you could make a rough analogy to these cars that wouldn't stop because people didn't know how to turn the cars off, right?
Right.
And they'll have a floor mat that is pinning the accelerator. And
Toyota had an issue with that.
And there's a thing where the guy the driver was a cop and had his whole family in the car, and he just kept pressing the power button. It wasn't like it wasn't a normal key. It was just a power button. And he didn't know that he could just like hold on to the power button and eventually it would turn off. He just kept tapping it. And
well, again, you don't read the manual, you don't learn this stuff.
Or you don't understand that it's just a computer, and that's how you turn off every computer is you hold the power button.
But this is a much more gentle failure mode, right? It's like, okay, correct. Well, you're being directed to the side of the road, and the cars come to a stop.
What I like though, too, when I first heard about this, so what I liked about the video is everyone immediately jumped to, oh, it's emergency phantom braking, right? It's just slamming on the brakes, and that's why it causes thing. And it does not look like it's slamming on the brakes to me. It does not look like it's phantom braking at all. It looks like it's trying to pull over and come to a stop.
Yeah,
and the people behind him weren't paying attention. Now, I don't blame the first driver, right? Like he
basically got cut off.
He got cut off, and so the car cut somebody off, which was not great, right? I kind of blame the software on that. But like that guy, okay. But like the third car, the fourth car, the fifth car, like, come on, folks. I mean, that's just a normal accident that happens because people are too close, going too fast, or not paying attention,
or all the above.
Anyway, but at least it did not look like a phantom braking issue. It looked like it was potentially a driver interacting with the thing. Which, to your point, Doug, is potentially a Tesla issue, right? Maybe it has to do with education. Maybe it has to do with the smart defaults or the initial safety of what it, does. Like, shouldn't the car detect that it's not safe to pull over and slow down or stop at that point, right? Like, maybe it shouldn't. It should be more, I don't know,
aware.
Well, it should be more. It should be more cautious in how quickly it's going to do that, right? Like, maybe it should take longer to slow down. If it doesn't have an initial need to stop.
Yeah, and I could think like those kind of features before you initiate them. It could do a forced education for like a new driver. It could with Autopilot. I'm sorry, FSD Beta. There's some kind of screens you had to click through and say okay to get that running, and I read it. So you could have something like that even for.
I didn't.
Autopilot.
I was going to say, I don't remember that.
I didn't read it.
With FSD Beta, there was definitely something I had to click and
I had to click through it.
I just didn't read it. I'm with Lewis. I probably didn't read it.
Okay, well, I did read it. But there was nothing to read just for Autopilot, I don't think. Though there was a calibration period. So, these are opportunities to educate the consumer, I guess.
How dare you force your education on me, Doug?
Well,
I choose to remain ignorant.
It's new feature that you don't know how to use. I remember years ago that when Autopilot first came out, there's a video of somebody has his elderly mom behind the steering wheel and turned on Autopilot. And again, this was just with the Mobileye system, whatever. And the mom screaming, she's like, with her hands up because the car's driving herself and she thinks she's about to die. She doesn't trust this thing. And, you could stay calm and just take control, but she's just freaked out. Education's important, particularly if you're of a generation that isn't so used to constant changing technology. So
there's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to that.
That actually brought me back to a childhood memory. I remember being in a car with my friends, and one of my good friend's sister was driving the car, and she wanted to get something in the back seat, and all of a sudden she just turned around and reached both hands off the wheel, and we all freaked out, like, what are you doing? And our friend that was in the passenger seat grabs the wheel, like, what's going on? And she's like, it's fine, it's on cruise control. And we're like, that doesn't steer for you. Anyway, so
it's cruise control from what, Anchorman, right? When they had that van. It's on cruise control, no problem.
Yeah, so I got to witness that firsthand as a child, or I think I was an early teen. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I was thinking of when you were talking about the turning on autopilot. Yeah, there's definitely some education necessary. I do wonder though, in the future, like let's fast forward 20 years, what's like the requirement? What are the requirements going to be to get a driver's license, right? Like if this becomes mainstream, if this becomes like most cars have it. Are they going to be strict? Like if you think about auto park, say you can, the car always parallel parks itself. Are they going to do parallel parking in a driving test?
It's funny to bring that up because here in the state of California, they discourage the use of Teslas.
Interesting.
So the law doesn't say you can't use a Tesla, but it's up to the judgment of the examiner. And most of my friends who have taken a Tesla to get their DMV test have been rejected. That you have to come back with a different car.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know about the US, but I would think a place like Germany or places that are that have proper training and actually take driver education seriously. You should know how to have basic skills if whatever helper doesn't work. Right. And that, and there should be some,
here's your keys, go have fun.
it should be, you should know how to change a tire or something, you should have basic skills, but I don't know that the US is the type of place that would do that.
We've just gone through 3 different driver's ed classes with my girls, and they're a joke. They are just a running joke. We would pay for them to do their classes because they had to, but neither my wife or I would let them go out driving until we took them out and ran them through some hours of training with us, which included things like tires and checking oil and pressure and why all this is important and why you need to pay attention to it. And just because the orange light comes on doesn't mean you have to panic, but it also means you need to pay attention. Just some really survival skills that aren't being taught.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people don't know that stuff. And I interact with a lot of people in different age groups because of like band and taekwondo and things like that. And I have a friend and they have no idea. Like I have some tire pressure light. I don't know what that means. They can't even say it's a tire pressure light. There's just some funny light.
Right.
Light on
some light. There's some light lit up.
I was like, well, you could check the manual, and wintertime.
Then they don't know where the manual is.
Tires and
manual. I have a manual.
Yeah.
Got to put summer air in those tires, or you got to take the summer air out and then put winter air in, right? Like that.
Well, if
the
it's
running
joke, it's got to be Elon's breath.
Yeah. Perrier from Spaceballs. That's the only thing I fill my tires with. Perrier.
It's Mega Made, sir.
Oh man. Alrighty. So let's see. We do have an interesting topic that most of us were. Well, okay. All of our topics are interesting. Thank you to our wonderful listeners for hanging out with us. But this one I think is exceptional as far as ridiculous. So there's a news article out of the state of Wyoming.
Cowboy country.
Now, let's be clear. This is not actually a law. This is proposal to be a law. So it's not been voted on. It's not official. But there is supposedly a proposed ban on EVs.
That's right.
What the heck is that? Doug, can you give us some background on this? Sorry, Mike. I apologize.
You're like, yeah, sure.
I was waiting to hear what Doug had to say.
I want to hear what Mike has to say, and then I want Doug's opinion on what Mike said. Sure. How about that?
All right. So, the wonderful state of Wyoming, which I love the state. It's a great place to go visit, has SJ0004 that's officially been announced, and it's the phasing out of electric vehicle sales by 2035. And
really
it's interesting because it starts off as a joint resolution expressing support for phasing out the sale of new EVs in Wyoming by 2035. And then there's a whole bunch of whereas, and it's all about the proud and long value history of oil and gas exploration and drilling and digging and exploitation of resources, which is what they're trying to protect. That's the very condensed short version. The fact they only have 500 EVs in the state may have something to do with it too. So
this sounds insane to me.
It's a big middle finger to California saying no gas cars and you have to buy an EV.
So the funny thing is, California is not the only place that has already put up legislature to like phase out.
We know
vehicles,
but California's got the big target on it. Yeah.
But like this is insane. I don't see how this can actually become I mean, I guess it could, but it seems ridiculous to me. It's seems very backwards because even if you're like pro oil and gas and all those other types of things, guess what? You can use those things to generate electricity. You don't need to pump it directly into your car to generate electricity. You can use it at power plants to then.
But that's too efficient, though.
That's too efficient. Oh,
and you end up using less of this resource we need to spend money on, right?
Oh man,
we need to be able to charge people for this resource. So
they do make they do bring up the fact that there's a lot of distance between places in Wyoming, and that EVs can't survive in that environment because there's no place to charge.
But this is America, damn it! I should have the freedom to make that decision.
Unless it's an EV.
Unless my decision is for an EV, and then I can get bent. Okay. That sounds ridiculous. Doug, do you think this is likely to happen?
Well, I mean, I would say no, except that there is historical precedent around the country. It's all local, state or community wide type things to either try to limit or disincentivize EVs. And maybe they don't see it that way, but it's ways of trying to generate revenue, like vehicle taxes, vehicle fees, like your EV vehicle fee, like you have to pay an extra $200 a year because you're driving an EV. And what's the argument? Well, you're not paying gas tax, so you're not paying for the roads. Well, you're still paying tolls, and and gas taxes haven't really increased for years, or not much, and they haven't kept up with inflation at all. So it doesn't make any sense, and there aren't even enough EVs on the road that the loss of gas tax revenue even makes a difference.
At 400 EVs, that's not much. Yeah.
But we better do this preemptively and charge you extra, or some places even put an extra fee on your electric bill. Like, that's like your gas tax, but we'll put it on your electric bill. It's insane. And obviously, passenger cars don't actually do that much damage to the road. It's the
trucks.
It's the trucks. Yeah. And I believe, I forget, years ago, I knew the equation, but it was like the mass of the vehicle per wheel to something like the 6th power. Something nuts like that in terms of the effect of damage. So it's the big heavy trucks that create the potholes, and your little commuter EV, even if it's heavy with batteries, isn't the one that's destroying the roads. So that loss of gas tax revenue isn't enough to justify it. And this is just, I don't think this particular thing would go anywhere, because it really is about limiting choice, right? It's if Wyoming is about open roads and freedom, you're gonna say, well, you can't have this particular type of car, which I'm sure you could drive into Wyoming with that, but maybe they'll charge you. Maybe they'll charge you coming over the border. Oh, here's your EV tax for driving in the state with an EV. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And also it's 12 years away. So California has remind me when that comes in effect. They're trying to
2035, I thought.
The same time.
I think the same year.
Yeah.
So it really does sound like a response. It sounds like okay, you're gonna mandate EVs, we're gonna ban them. Okay.
Have
that'll
a
make
nice
all the
life.
difference.
We'll see what happens by the time we get there.
Man, you would hope that in 12 years that EVs dominate the market and are more efficient and have better range and hopefully drive
Well,
themselves.
I would be shocked if they didn't. Like honestly, so I'm very much a skeptic on the pace of FSD happening, and even I think 2035 will probably have actual working FSD to what most people consider it. But like, yeah, EVs dominating the market. Like, I would be, yeah, it should be there. It's
so Mark Sequence has got a comment. California charges so much for gas and registration, but roads are still crap. How? I can tell you why, Mark.
oh,
Because the taxes
Gas tax can go anywhere.
It doesn't. The gas tax and registration goes in the general fund.
The general fund, yeah.
And there is no tracking.
Yeah, there was a proposal some years ago in California, and I remember voting on it, which was that the gas tax has to go to the roads.
Yep.
And
that got beaten down by special interests.
Yeah, it did. And of course, I mean, I'm sure the legislature so in California you can have propositions which can be brought
legislation by propositions,
right? So, but of course, the legislature isn't going to ask to have their hands tied, right? They'll prefer to be able to do what they want with the money. So, that didn't have much of a chance of passing.
They learned their lesson after Prop 13 took effect and was upheld by the courts, and they said never again are we going to let the citizenry do that. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a deep topic. We could get into all kinds of things. It's right up there with like campaign finance reform and all these other, like they'll never pass, but whatever.
Though it plays a lot of other states when you start talking road tax and registration of EVs and what makes an EV special over a gas car. Why are they treated differently? Yeah, I think it's going to become a much bigger issue the more EVs show up.
I think given time, EVs will proliferate. There'll be more of them everywhere. People that now are very anti-EV will stop being anti-EV. Like there's like a culture war thing associated with this as well, and I think that'll go away over time. Like it's just EVs are just a different technology. They work really well. They're a great way to get around. Yes, they're better for the environment, but they're also better for the driver, right? Like in most cases, there's still the range anxiety. There's still the charging times. All of those things are improving. Eventually those things go away. And then there's really just no reason not to have an EV, right? It's just for everybody, it will be better all the time.
To the gas tax issue, they do need to come up with a solution though. I never thought gas tax I mean, there should be gas taxes, but to me, that shouldn't be about the roads. That should be about the environmental impact of burning gas. And, for a while, the idea was, oh, well, you should pay based on miles driven. But, if maybe you commute a lot and are those miles driven within your state or whatever. And then there's some things of having a tracker on your car, so you know how many miles you drove within this area, and that's what you should be taxed. But then that's a privacy concern, right? They're basically tracking where you're driving.
Were you part of the testing they were doing with a little adapter that would plug into your car?
Little OBD2.
Yeah.
I was aware of that. I
was part of that. They tracked where I went and how fast I drove and how my braking was and how my acceleration was.
But that's for insurance, wasn't it?
No. It was the exploration of a use-based tax versus just a tax. And they wanted to figure out driving habits and how far people really did drive and how they drove. If you're a lead foot versus someone that kind of
I would say that all that shouldn't matter. It should just be, you pay a registration fee every year and you just look at the odometer. Just give an odometer reading. Hopefully you're not cheating it. And that should, be part of your registration tax, which
I mean, don't tolls just fix this anyway, right? Like
in a way, no. I mean, if you have a bunch of toll roads and here there are a ton of toll roads and they do it by camera. And it sucks because I'm right now I'm in Maryland, but I'm still a resident of California. And you really have to try to track them down because they'll get sent to an address I have in California, but I won't see it for a while. And I had a $5 toll that I had to end up paying like $75 for because of the late fees that they piled up on it.
Yeah. Out here in Southern California, the toll roads are all private. They're a private enterprise. They're
interesting.
It's an agreement with the state.
But they take their payment through Easy Pass or whatever it is out there.
Yeah, it's Easy Pass.
I don't know. I feel like, though, if this is a big enough problem, they could just effectively make toll roads for all the important roads and do it that way rather than track everybody's mileage and try to figure out how much you pay.
They could do
Texas
that.
Tried that.
But it should, I believe vehicle weight should be a factor because, whatever it is either the fourth or the sixth power, somewhere between there. It makes such a difference. So if I'm driving a little commuter car, someone driving a big heavy truck should be paying more because you're doing literally more damage to the roads. And if that's what it's about, if that's what you're going to pretend that's about, then that's how you should charge it based on gross vehicle weight.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's gonna be a bigger factor is like the Tesla Semi with how
82,000 pounds.
Well, no, it's basically EV tractor trailers is gonna impact the roads with the gas tax more than
weight. So
you know what I mean? It's gonna have a bigger
so much
impact.
Fuel.
Right. Because they use a lot of fuel now. They're going to stop using fuel, and they're the ones that damage the roads the most. So they're going to have to figure that whole situation out. But not today.
I'm sure in Wyoming they'll come up with something.
I'm sure they'll come up with something. All right. So we've got one last quick thing I do want to talk about. This is just really interesting news. It came out like 2 days ago, I think. And it was in the Giga factory in Austin, near where I'm located. We have a tweet. If you want to share that, Doug, for those that are watching, basically have some pictures. If you do the Twitter,
okay, I'll get there.
Yep.
That technology thing.
A little technical detail.
Which Twitter are you talking about?
Which Twitter? All the Twitters.
Okay.
Basically, what we have is Joe posted on Twitter. Joe Tetmeyer. And basically he said, Friday the 13th, don't get distracted by all the price cuts on Tesla cars. The real story is the assembly of the 9K ton Giga Press. Here are a few images to get you started. Much more on a busy Giga Texas in my YouTube video later today. So if you're interested, go check out his YouTube. But yeah, we have some pictures of them basically installing the Giga Press in Austin. This is most likely going to be used for the Cybertruck. Looks interesting, but anyway, I was just excited. I thought that was cool. Expected operation seems to be around March for those that are curious of when the Giga Press will be ready. So got a couple months before it's ready to go. But if you're waiting on a Cybertruck, again, this will most likely impact you being able to get one. And I thought it was pretty cool. So another fun little bit of news in Tesla world that happened this week.
So here's a question for you, Lewis. Is the Cybertruck going to qualify for the rebate?
I'm going to say not a damn chance in hell. Is that my prediction? Like, no freaking way. Yeah, I don't know. The original one, sure.
Maybe.
The one that we have now, not so much. But yeah, so I'm gonna. I say the original one. I mean the original pricing that they talked about. The original pricing, yeah, maybe. But the current pricing, no, not gonna happen. But it's possible. Does a truck count as an SUV? Does that count for the, in the federal rebates?
Hard to say.
I mean, it's closer to an SUV than a sedan.
That's true. I don't think Rivian counts.
Actually, Tesla just dropped all their prices across the board. But what we don't know is what are the price difference on the Cybertruck?
Yeah, well, the Cybertruck go back to the promised pricing at launch. They already got rid of the 40K one, though, right? They just got rid of
it just disappeared.
The single motor version is just gone, right? Kind of like that 40 kilowatt hour Model S that they had at the beginning, the cheap Model S, which was they totally disincentivized and then just got rid of.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. You know, we don't have any information on that. I doubt they're going to drop the price secretly. They'd probably tell us, but I guess we'll find out closer to when it comes out. But yeah. Let's see. There any comments we want to cover? All right. So Mike asks, what about the new radar camera? When is that coming? That's a great question, Mike. We don't know. I wish I knew. So it is very likely that there will be a radar. I have seen some leaks, more recent leaks about hardware 4 that's speculating that we're going to get details very soon out of China. It looks like China is going to get the upgrade first to hardware 4. They tend to get a lot of changes in the vehicle sooner. What it looks like was that there's not necessarily going to be new camera location. So unfortunately for you, Doug, I don't think you're going to get your front camera, but it did look like they have higher resolution and wider field of view.
We've got duct tape for Doug.
Cameras. There was also a change. It looked like there were going to be 2 cameras instead of 3 cameras on the front, which I thought was interesting.
Right. You know, my thinking on that, so that, you know, going to more of a stereo view on the front instead of the 3 cameras. And the 3 cameras that they had was like currently have is one's far, one's closer, and one's kind of looking up to see the traffic lights. You know, I'm not sure. I might get that nose camera, because if you look at the Cybertruck, someone took some close-up shots of it at the Peterson Museum in LA, and there was a little camera on the nose of that Cybertruck. So but that's the kind of vehicle you need, right? Because, you know, you might have small children playing right in front of it.
But there is that new refresh supposedly coming up for the Model 3s. You know, maybe you'll get your nose camera.
So maybe part of losing a camera, you know, given whatever their stack they have, maybe part of losing a camera behind the rearview mirror is adding one to the nose. Who knows? Who knows if it's on the nose?
It's very possible. We don't know yet. But anyway, so that's what we have. Unfortunately, again, no inkling of when it's going to happen, but I would expect in the next few months we'll probably hear some details. It's, like I said, most likely coming out of China, getting a refresh first. They tend to leak things there. Let's see. Jesse Hill asks, what is the range effect of, say, 20 degrees Fahrenheit? I assume you mean the driving range of your car. Mike, do you have the numbers off the top of your head, or Doug, do you know off the top of your head?
So it depends. The earlier Teslas without the heat pump, while the earlier Teslas without the heat pump take about a 20-25% hit. The Teslas with the heat pump are down like 10%. It's a much less of a hit.
You know, it really depends on how, like, when you're driving. If the car managed to cold soak, like if it's overnight, it can be significant, because it will use power.
It's got to heat the battery
to maintain the battery to be happy. And if you're going out the door, it can certainly be 25%. And then the other thing is it affects other aspects of driving. You have reduced power is available to the battery, so reduced output and input. So the amount of energy that can be recouped through regenerative braking is reduced. So you'll have less throttle lift braking because of that. And my Model 3 has an option to compensate with the brakes, which is interesting, so that that characteristic doesn't change.
I actually use that all the time.
But then also, if you're on a trip, and I got burned with this once, where the battery was low. So it was at like 20%, but it was enough to sit overnight, but not enough that I could safely say, "Oh, let's preheat the battery while I'm not in the car," you know, sure. And then try to go supercharge, and the charging is way slow while the battery is cold. So in that case, I was better off just getting, you know, the minimum charge I needed, and then, you know, risking for the battery to give a chance to warm up while I'm driving. And it will warm up while you're driving, because there is an internal resistance to the battery. So as you're using it, it will start to warm up some, in addition to whatever power Tesla wants you to do the preheating of the battery, and then, you know, get to a charger and charge at a more reasonable rate. So it's not just a loss in range, it's also affecting your sort of overall experience with the car. So you do want to think about, you know, your trip and where you're going and when you get out, and if you can preheat the battery with shore power, like if you're plugged in at home, you know, go ahead and preheat the battery before you leave, so that some of that energy of heating the battery comes from your wall outlet or from your, you know, from your home power, instead of depending on battery power for that. So there are plenty of little things you can do to mitigate it, but it can be significant. And if you're, you know, practically, if you've let your car cold soak and you're going, it can feel like half, you know, it can feel like up to half. So something to pay attention to.
For sure. We had one quick comment from Mark based on the last thing, though. You know, he mentioned, wasn't there a headlight placed on cameras, one camera with each headlight? I believe, though, that was purely around the Matrix LED headlights. They have cameras inside of them that's used for the headlight operation, doing the fancy stuff that we don't get yet. I'm not sure that those cameras are actually feeding back to the Tesla to be used for FSD or anything like that. But we'll have to see with as the new stuff comes out. We'll see what they end up doing. Let's see. Nirab Desai asked, can you get federal tax credit for used cars? Yes, you can.
Yeah, you can. There's some caveats. The car has to be good.
So what are the caveats? Yeah.
So the car has to be on an approved list, and that list is evolving. Like the BMW i3 wasn't on the list up to just about 3 days ago. Now it is. And each week they seem to add more and more cars to it. So always check that list from the IRS to be sure.
As a used car, does it have to be like from a dealership, or will it work with a private party interchange? You know?
It's not clear yet.
Like what if I'm selling a car to my nephew or my son?
I don't know.
You know, my mom.
I'm not sure anybody knows really.
Like it seems like a good way to game the system, right? I'm going to sell a car to a relative that lives in my house, and you know.
Yeah, I can ask my wife, hey, do you want a car? You want
want to buy a car? Make you a deal.
Yeah.
You got to sell your Model S to get that Cybertruck.
Well, I don't have to. I could just buy the Cybertruck, but I'm not doing that anyway. You know what? I probably would, just to fit it into the garage, right? Like, I don't think I could fit both of them. I'm not sure it's going to fit. Yeah, I don't think the Cybertruck would fit either. But anyway, so there you go. So you can do it, but there are some restrictions.
There's some
so
caveats.
You might want to look that up. And the discount is not as much. You're not getting 7,500. I think it's capped at like 4,000. A couple other things, but anyway, I would definitely recommend looking into it if you're interested. And let's see. TZ asks, is this a good time to buy used performance models or hold for more drops? Well, I mean, you know, diamond hands.
You like playing poker?
No, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
You know, no one can tell you if holding is a good idea or not. You're gonna have to make that decision for you, because we don't know what's gonna happen. Right? It's speculative. Are there likely to be drops in the future? Sure, but I would say there's more likely to be new features or tech or other things that you want that come before more drops come. So I don't know.
It's going to cut two ways on this. I think there's going to be more drops, but I think there's going to be more people underwater with their loans who can't afford to let go of their car, even if they wanted to.
Sure, for sure.
So, less cars available on the used market.
Yeah, I mean, that's like deciding when to buy a laptop, or it's
right.
Like,
there's always a new piece of tech around the corner.
If you can afford it now, you buy it. I think probably now is a good time to buy if you're ready and you've been on the fence for a bit. Probably now is a good time to buy. It's hard to say what's going to happen in the future. The wait may become longer in the future. They may not be able to keep up with the demand they've generated. They may have excuses to raise the price.
Even though you buy a used Tesla today, the insurance is going to cost you the same as it did yesterday and the day before. The insurance hasn't gone down, and the sales tax is still there. So
yeah,
you know what? That's a good point, Mike. They just ripped me off and cut my value of my car by 20 grand or whatever it is. I'm going to call my insurance company and demand a discount. How dare you not lower my rates?
Let me know how that works out for you.
Huh. What I should say, we've had some comments. We were talking about the tax rebate. The consensus in the comments right now is that it has to be a dealer if you're buying used, and as opposed to a private party sale.
That actually.
What if I have a dealer license? No, I'm just teasing.
Well, if you have a dealer license, you have other issues.
I have a friend that has a dealer license. How about that?
A close friend.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's it for today's episode. We can wrap this up. As always, thank you everyone for hanging out with us. Love all the comments and really appreciate you guys week after week. Some of you are regulars. Really appreciate it. As always, if you like the show, feel free to like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Click the bell, do all those fancy YouTube people things that I don't fully know what those are. You can, in the details, you'll have all the information about all of our social media stuff. As always, you can go to teslamotorsclub.com. You can become a supporting member there, which helps the website and the podcast. You can thanks to all of our folks behind the scenes, Adam and Danny and everyone else. I don't know. I'm Miss James sometimes. I don't know. Things are coming and going. So as always, love it. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. This has been episode 32. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.